Hunting for that magical genie with piles of cash? Join Candice and her guests as they uncover financial secrets, have a laugh at past mistakes, and savor financial rebounds. Thank you for listening. Let's dive in and do something today that your future self will thank you for.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited that everyone is joining me on the Money Flow Genie podcast today because I have someone very dear to me, Sanjay Patel. He is, Sanjay, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll get rolling with the content of the podcast.
Okay, sounds good. I used to be a software engineer. I was one for 27 years. And then uh, my wife is the one that got us into real estate. So we're now commercial real estate investors, but we actually started off doing fix and flips in DC. And then we started looking to essentially ramp up our passive income so I could leave my W-2. And so for that, we started with single family rentals and decided that did not scale. So we went into started passively investing in apartment complexes and shopping centers, and essentially, and then I got the opportunity to leave my job, and I went ahead and did so. And then since then, we've actually been able to get about 140 doors as a general partner, as being active on the deal, and as well as we still continue to have our passive investments as well, invested in 9 or 10 different states at this point passively. So that's
Wow. That's impressive, Sanjay. That's impressive. So in your quest for time freedom, have you reached that goal? Are you still using your worked income to then create passive income for you?
Well, I left my W-2 a few years ago, so now it's really whatever we do with our real estate. Obviously, still do need to work at it a little bit, so we're not quite to the threshold of being totally financially free, but we're getting there.
That's wonderful. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is about the journey. Because a lot of people come in and they say, "Oh, I'm here. Look at me. I'm on this beautiful beach." But I find that it's the nuances within the experience and that really can enrich someone's life and someone else's journey as they're on the path. Um, you know, that's so great that you got to leave your W-2 and transition in to the real estate. And for our listeners, real estate is one of the primary assets that I like to focus in on. I know a lot about it. So, and there's so many, real estate is like a big umbrella, and then there's so many facets underneath of it that you could be in multiple aspects of that. Have the diversity of your portfolio with under the umbrella of real estate, and that's where I am headed. So you're going to hear a lot of guests coming on and talking about real estate, and I too am in multifamily, like Sanjay. So this is a wonderful thing. But before we continue on, I always like to start off the podcast really talking about something that society kind of shuns us to boast. And I think I'm going to call this like celebration clips. And it's a little clip of your life where it's a long, something a big goal that you've reached, or whether it's just a small moment. I want to hold space for you right now, Sanjay. If you want to share with us something that you're really proud of yourself, and let's talk about that and celebrate that with you.
Sure. This past weekend, I actually did a 10-mile Tough Mudder. It's the second one I've done in person. I've done one virtually as well back when COVID was going on, but this is the first time I've done one that's 10 miles. The previous one was 10K. Um, I'm My whole life, I have not been one to be, I'm not really athletic or anything. It's really more of a mindset thing. Trying to do something that's uncomfortable, because essentially when you do things that are uncomfortable, that's when you truly grow. So just learning things about myself and the people that I did it with, they were awesome. Last year when I ran it, it was the same people I ran with, and we're already planning our next one for next year. So that'll be.
Wow.
And for someone that up until 2019, I did not work out. I was overweight. I didn't work out. So to be able to do something like this is actually, for me, a big accomplishment. So
Well, I want to congratulate you. First of all, anything that's beyond, I don't even think I could personally run a mile, maybe a quarter mile, I'm not a runner. Um, but I do have to ask you, what is a 10-mile runner? For someone who doesn't run, you said mutter, right?
yes, it's the Tough Mudder. So it's 10 miles, but it's also a lot of obstacles. So there are mud bogs that we have to essentially wade through. You're going through some icy streams. There's an obstacle called the Arctic Enema, which you're essentially submerging yourself in ice water. Uh, and but the great thing about the Tough Mudder is it is actually the community itself. All the participants are there and they help each other through the obstacles. And one of the things I always say is, if the regular world, if the outside world were similar to what all the participants of the Tough Mudder do, it would be such a better place. But it gives you an ideal to aspire to. So that's another reason why I like doing it.
So is it so people are like, it sounds like to me, it's almost like they would be, if you're stuck in the mud, pardon the pun, that someone would be there holding your hand and helping pull you out
Yes.
and continue
Yes.
on. So it's about completing the race. It's not about who wins.
Exactly. And everybody is there. There are some people that do it for time, but most of the people are there just to go through for the experience and to run the race um, eh, and get through the obstacles. And there are certain obstacles. There's no way you can do it by yourself. You have to have more few people that work with you. And I think that's also a great analogy back to real estate, like we were talking about. If you're looking at real estate, there's nothing that everything you do in real estate, you have to have a team, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to say, thinking about like real estate, it's intimidating. I mean, most people actually don't realize how much they know because everyone tends to have a roof over their head. And doing so, then you do know a little bit about how it works, whether you're paying rent or whether you're paying a mortgage. But before even jumping into real estate, like how did you decide that real estate was it? Was this your first investment? How did you even get into real estate? Any investments? I mean, did
and
you just like get a dartboard and just throw something at a list of investments? How did you get started?
no, no, actually, so the way we got into real estate, my wife Mita, she used to be a CPA. But when we had the boys, she decided to stay at home with them. Once they got into high school, she was looking for something. She was looking to find because at that point, obviously, she had a lot of free time that she wanted to point in the right direction. So what she did, we actually started a franchise. It was a frozen yogurt place, actually, for a few years. That didn't work out, but we learned a lot from doing it. And then a while later, what we did was in 2017, she actually joined one of the big mentorship groups for fixing and flipping real estate. And in addition to fixing and flipping, they did tell us about commercial real estate, and that's what really attracted me to it. First, we started with the fix and flip, um, and then eventually, what we did was we looked, and when we sort of consciously started thinking about replacing my W-2, that's when we started passively investing, and then also looking to see what it would take to be active on the apartment complex side. And
And when you got active, you sought out mentorship for that, or you dove in?
Yes, we sought out a mentorship for that, uh, and that's actually, I think, how we first met you, Candice,
Mhm.
because we were part of the same mentorship group. And but that in itself, the reason why I chose that mentorship group was also in 2019, around the time we were starting to think of doing the passive income and everything. I started attending Tony Robbins, and I started working on my mindset. And that's one reason why in 2019 I started working out, coming to, and I used to be 60 pounds heavier than I am now. And it really has all to do with just the consistent steps. And I think there's been a lot of growth in the past 5, 6 years that even outside real estate and things like that. I, I'm. It's funny. My wife tells me she sometimes thinks I'm a totally different person now than I was 5 years ago. So
That sounds like it's a good thing.
yeah, it is.
So, I love how personal development, if you were to, when I originally came into it, any kind of like investing, I never affiliated personal development with the speed at which I would be able to make effective decisions that really changed the trajectory of my life.
Mhm.
Those that didn't compute. And I got into personal development and got a life coach. And within a very short period of time in the program, it was like, oh, I have all these quadrants of my life, the financial, family, vocation, and health and well-being. And if you think of those as like a circle, at any given point, ideally you want to have those create, like if you put it like on a chart, like a bullseye, and if you put where, the center is being, a low point, and the doing really well expands out. And if you make like little dots and then you connect those dots on all those four quadrants, if it looks like a bean or an amoeba, then,
Mhm.
that's a quadrant you really need to expand on, because I found that from personal experience, if one is lacking, the others start to deteriorate and to come down into that same level. Um, so life it adds more stress and more challenge. Did you find that kind of
Yes, I
complete?
totally agree because if you the thing that ends up happening is you start concentrating on some areas that aren't that well, but then the other pieces start to suffer a little bit as well. And trying to figure out how to sort of develop yourself in total. That's part of, and I think doing that over the past 5 years, the that's been, like I said, a big change in me, and I know it's contributed to us being able to do what we've been able to do with real estate because it's just I'm in a better frame of mind. And
Right. Yeah, yeah. I agree with you 100%. When I look back at who I was when I first started this journey, I had the idea of starting and talking about this process. I didn't feel confident enough to do it because I felt so raw at it. I didn't feel like I didn't even have a toe in the water. And it's taking me literally 13 years to get to this place where I feel like, you know what, the destination is never going to be there actually. There are goals along that destination,
mm,
but it's always moving, because the more I expand, the larger my world becomes. And then I don't have one destination, I have many. And those have a whole little journey on their own. So it's like some things are expressway paths, and some things are really enjoy this little country road and enjoy the nuances as you go. And part of that, I agree, is just that whole self-development and health and well-being is so imperative to being successful in any of this. I hear a lot of mentors talking about, let's burn the ships. And I disagree with that, because I feel like no one operates well under stress. So if you just, I mean, I get the concept of, wanting to move forward, but burning the ships, the metaphor, and being stuck on an island, then, well, how is that any different than what you were trying to escape before? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Just curious.
So the way I ended up leaving my W-2 was, I I was actually laid off, and I was given a large severance. And but it was one of those things where when I went in, the I had a big smile on my face because I knew exactly what was coming up. I knew, and Mita and I had already decided that I was going to eventually leave. I was trying to figure out when would be the right time, and essentially that, and when they did that, and it was probably the easiest exit interview anybody ever had, because I had a big smile on their face, and they were a bit they're a bit puzzled, I think, as to how easy it was. But because I had worked there for 18 years, and essentially I was one of the high priced engineers, and they were getting ready to sell off our division, and they were trying to essentially make their balance sheet, getting rid of some of the high priced people. A few weeks before that, they'd gotten rid of some project managers and stuff. So I knew at some point something was going to happen. So that it wasn't that hard of a decision to just say, okay, that's it. That's one chapter closed. Let's move on to the next. Because it was one of those that we had already made the decision that we were going to do this eventually. They just accelerated it a little bit for me.
But I mean, in the moment, it's a blessing in disguise, but there's that still, did you have like a little bit of a bit of fear, like, okay, we're in this, we know we're going to do this, but like, how did you deal with any kind of emotions that came up in that and stepping forward?
It was almost relief, I'll be honest with you, because I was trying to figure out a way out of that job. And I don't think I was performing very well towards the end, because I wasn't really into it. And I'll be honest about that. And I think that probably contributed to what they were seeing as well. But in the end, it was, I I actually found another job a week later that had better pay and a shorter commute. And that's when Mita and I sat down and actually made the decision. Well, we were going to do this anyway. If I start another job, something that I'm going to I'm committing to, I wouldn't feel right leaving them, after a few months or after a year or something. But if we're going to do this, we might as well start now. And that's where, your analogy of burn the boats, that's sort of where I've used it in the past for us is, you know, it, essentially burning the boats, not really we're stranded on an island, but we're getting rid of the past and moving on to a new chapter. So,
Yeah, so that's I believe in the law of attraction, and the energy that you put out there is what comes around. And so I'm hearing that theme of, I'm planning my exit strategy, and I know for myself, I have my own landscaping business that does well. So to just like walk away from that, there is this hesitation to from transitioning when it's really working, and I've been doing it for a very long time. So it's almost like I don't even have to think when I'm doing it.
yeah.
And so it is interesting how you had this opportunity, and then they made the decision for you. Sometimes I think that's a little easier, but it's
Yeah.
also can be trying. So that's really nice that you are able to
And
have that
yeah,
shift.
and it was essentially, I think that was the little push I needed, and I got it. So
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. And I think I just want to acknowledge you and Mita for making that decision to, okay, now we have an opportunity to repeat the same thing again, or step into that fear of this new thing that we really want to do and devote our time to it. And I want to honor you for doing that, because that's not something that people would always do. You stepped into what your passion was becoming, you know,
yeah,
and to lead a joyful life. That's really cool.
yeah, and I think one of the things that helped with is I immediately saw a lot of a lot more free time, I'll be honest with you. My commute used to be about an hour to an hour and a half every day. Um, and and then right after that is when we had a lot of the shutdowns and stuff like that. And I was actually, the boys were home because they couldn't go to college, and essentially that was a lot of time that we got to spend as a family as well. So, I thought that was really.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, how did you all right, so going a lot of people have a problem when they go from a structured, W-2 job for a while, and then all of a sudden they don't have that structure. How did you keep yourself? Are you a motivated individual? Did you have to like have an adjustment? What did you do to keep yourself like moving forward instead of becoming just like, let's become couch potatoes?
Okay, so at the beginning, I think I maybe a little too much freedom, but eventually, part of the self development is I started reading other books as well. So I started doing things like Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, and essentially made myself a structured morning routine that got me started. And then eventually also learned about time blocking. So I was able to essentially, okay, this part of the day I'm going to be doing real estate. This part, I like scouting as well. I've been a scout leader since 2007, since my boys started in the program. So, and even now that they've left, I'm still part of it. It's just it's something else that's just really rewarding. But I spend a part of my day doing that, and it's just a matter of uh, I think you end up trying to organize yourself so that in this part of the day I'm doing certain things, and this part I'm doing something else, and then just try to be as disciplined as you can with that.
Right, right. And how was it working together? Like it's difficult to work with your significant other in a business. I mean, so it sounds like the two of you are partners in a business, or do you have your own separate businesses that are similar in topic?
Okay. Well, we do a lot of things together, but commercial real estate is really my thing. Mita has been really interested in infinite banking, and she's gotten together with a group that does that sort of takes that to a community level, and that's been her pet project for the past year or two. And so she actually concentrates more of her time on that, and I concentrate on the real estate side.
Oh, that's nice. And they complement one another. I'll definitely have to have Mita on
Yeah.
to talk about infinite banking because that is a strategic part of creating another vault to utilize and make your money work twice, which we'll definitely get Mita on. If not, I'll poke at her to get her to come on.
I'll poke at her to get you to get her on.
All right, Mita, you're on. You got two people coming at you. You don't even know it yet. Oh, wow. That's fantastic. So what about like, all right, so you went from one job to another, and like time and how wonderful that the second one that you've chosen is giving you more time freedom. Is that something that you want to continue to do, or are you looking to create your future having even more time freedom?
I think eventually what we want to do is to make it so that the infinite banking concepts that we have essentially will generate all the passive income we need and
Mhm.
give us total time freedom.
Mhm.
And but I see myself wanting to do something at some point, so I probably won't. If it's not real estate, then it's probably something else. I'll probably try to do something at some point. I think I know there are certain goals that we have, and there's certain things that I'm still, bucket list items that I need to work through as well. And and that's actually how the Tough Mudder was one of them. I've been trying to schedule at least one or two per year since essentially I we've started doing the personal development, and I think that more than anything has actually helped me with my mindset because I'm getting to do things that you know at some point I almost gave up the chance that I would be able to do. So, you know,
Wow. Wow. That's right there is an accomplishment in itself, having that mind shift. Did that take a long time for you to get that shift and that perspective? Or was it just a matter of having a little glimmer of hope, so to speak, still in there and just having the right people surrounding you?
it's really all along the personal development journey. One of the other people I've been following is Jesse Itzler, and he's big on doing the most with the time you have,
Mhm.
because you never know when you're going to run out of it. So he calls have every year you have a big thing, what he calls is a masogi, which is sort of your mission for the year. You're going, this is your big thing for this year, that type of thing. And, you know, a few years ago, it was Mita and I going to Fiji. Last year, it was actually my first Tough Mudder. Then it's my next one is actually I'm going to do an Antarctic expedition. So,
Oh, wow. I can't wait to hear about that. Wow. But this is really wonderful because often we hear we set our goals. We're taught to like set a goal. It has to be this huge thing. And sometimes too far in advance. I like breaking down my goals into little. I have like I have an overall area that I would like to lean towards. But I like to break things down in like 90 days. How many steps can I take to get
mhm,
closer to that? And I totally believe do what you love with what you have until you can, build to the place you want to be. Because if we just stay in that space of thinking one day never comes. And I don't know so when you go to, let's just say, just this race that you just did, which I'm still like in awe. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Running 10 miles. I don't know about that. Although I'm quite a lifter. I can lift a lot. I'm probably can lift a lot
I
of weight, but running is just not who I am. So tell me, how did you prepare for something like that when just so people can get an idea of what it means to have a goal and then work towards it? Like, what are some of the things? Can you give some practical examples so people can use that to reference how?
part of it is just is actually getting that goal on the schedule. So the first thing I did was, yeah, I actually just went ahead and signed up for it. I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I did that towards the beginning of last year. And then, the other part is actually declaring it, sort of like I just declared the Antarctic expedition. It was like, because once you start telling people about it, it becomes more real. And the more real it becomes, the more you're going to start working towards it, because that's part of who we are as people, right? Is all right. If it's something that you never talk about, but you put it on the calendar and then you never revisit it,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
And one of the other big goals is you need to every week or every day do something that gets you closer to that goal. You've heard of Alan Bean. He's an astronaut in Apollo 12.
Mhm.
That was one of the big things when he talked to people. He would ask them, do you have a big goal? And if so, did you do something towards that goal today? And he used to say 85% of the people said that they haven't done anything that day, but they would get to it. And he's like, well, the 15% that actually did something are the ones that are going to get to the goal. Uh, so that's the idea is even if it's a little thing, do something towards that goal. And but for the Tough Mudder, I started working out in 2019 as many as 3 to 5 times a week. I've actually scaled that back a little bit, but it's been a little more intense in that I've been doing 3 sessions with a personal trainer. Each week. And like you said, it's actually more heavy lifting than anything else. So I wasn't quite. I think one of the things I figured out was I need to incorporate more cardio. So I'm going to. That's probably one of the things I'll do for next year.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if but it's almost like you think about it, it was a lofty goal last year. This year I did it again, and now it's sort of okay, every year I'm going to do one.
It's become a habit.
Yeah.
Wow. Think about that. That's beautiful. One of the things that I know for myself, that and most people say, oh, I don't have time, or I'll do it tomorrow because today's too busy. And I just recently read a book called Elastic Habits. And for me, it's about building habits. He also wrote the book Tiny Habits. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's basically put something on the calendar that he breaks it down. It's so much into doing it. And not everything can you do in these tiny little moments, but if you want to write a book, he breaks it down as far as write one sentence. And then and that's like you get like a little green star for writing one sentence for your book. Takes 1 minute. It's like we can find these like tiny bits and pieces. I actually applied it for myself with just applying 10 minutes a day. I always go down in my studio and working on this one sculpture that I've been working on for a little while. And it is amazing how at 10 minutes I have this, because my sculpture, working on my art, it feeds my soul. It's like meditation for me. And when I'm doing that, it just everything goes away. And when I go down every day, I can see the progress of those 10 minutes. It's amazing how much you can get done in 10 minutes, and you build that habit. And so I'm thinking about you and doing in the workout, and just like now that habit is just built up. And now you're just this is just a part of your life, doing these runs.
Yeah, and I really, when I don't get a chance to work out now, it actually feels weird. So it's one of those. So when I'm traveling, I have to find a place that has a gym, and that's actually one of the first things I look for now is when we find a place to stay is okay. I'm going to be there for 3 days. I need to at least work out one or two of those days. So I need a gym there. So there.
That's fantastic. Let's go back to a little bit to, I mean, I could talk about this constantly. Let's go back a little bit to investing. So how, have you started your journey? And you said you did with passive investing in the real estate and the commercial realm. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you started that, and what it was like to take your first step in actually, sending that payment, that check in. um, tell me like the emotional process around that and how you actually decided where to passively invest. Like, and if you can touch on like family history, did you come from a family that does, practice, your retirement, put X amount of dollars for retirement each paycheck? Or is this something that you had to like implement in your new life?
So the saving for retirement, that was something that was ingrained in me. The problem is, and I think one of the issues that everybody has these days is they're taught to stow it away in like a 401k or something like that. And that's what I had bought into. And so all of our money was in a 401k. We had a couple of other retirement accounts and things like that. And um, I'll be honest, if I knew way back when what I know now, I would have not done the 401k. I would have gone at it totally differently. But that actually is one of the things I brought to my kids. Is my son just recently started his first job, and he came to me. He's like, "Should I do a 401k?" I'm like, "No, you already have an IUL. uh, we can get a second one. And once you get to the point where you can essentially cascade money through the IULs, that more than takes care of any employer match that you might get. And, and the best part of that is you actually have access to the money. So if you want to retire at 35 or 40, you don't have to wait till 60 to have access to your 401k funds. Um,
And so for our listeners, can you just describe that haven't heard of an IUL, what that is?
IUL, Index Universal Life. There's a couple of different types of life insurance policies. There's a whole life. There's an Index Universal Life. They both have their pros and cons, and both are great if you're going to practice infinite banking and you're going to invest for the future. It's just they each have their pros and cons. So with an IUL, you tend to be able to grow it uh, faster because it's usually indexed on either the stock market or something else. And the pro to a whole life is it has steady growth over time. So if in any one year the stock market or whatever your IUL is indexed to, it has a bad year, your whole life policy will still continue to grow.
Right.
So, but it's really a couple of different things, some different considerations if you want to use one or the other. We're sort of using IULs more recently. We had started off with, and I will say this, we started converting over to infinite banking probably in the 2017, 2018 range. That's when we first started getting the policies. And because initially, we had the passive income, I will say that the policies and everything else extended our essentially the timetable we had in order to get commercial real estate going as well, because we restructured our finances, we had more reserves to fall back on than we would have if we didn't have it.
Wow. That's really powerful. That's one thing that people usually reserves. It's not something that we always think about. We're always in the moment. And I just want to add to our listeners who aren't familiar with the whole life and the IUL life insurance policies, you cannot go to your just average insurance agent to get these. These are sold by people that are specialists, and your individual goals are how these policies are underwritten. So I will have guests come on and talk about this. And in the meantime, I will put links in this show note to be able to refer to what these are so that you can at least start to educate yourself on that before that the podcast comes out. But that's really powerful to know that. I mean, and we both know that the retirement systems that are set up a long time ago, they're misleading the American public, and it's really sad. And that's one of the reasons why, this podcast is come about. I saw it for myself. I felt like the harder I worked, the more I tried to save, the less I had. It made no sense whatsoever. And the more I was paying to the government. And these things were just not computing. And, as we're part of other mentorship groups, I'm understanding why now. And I just feel like it's doing a disservice not to be able to share what I can with what I have, so others know, seek other answers out there instead of just relying on exactly what you're just kind of told to do from the 1950s.
And that actually will be one of the reasons that you need to get Mita on. She just
Yes.
recently got her agent certification. So
Yeah.
she,
Yeah.
she actually knows how to set up the policies. So
Which is fantastic. Yeah. You want to be able to trust someone, want to have somebody that's in your corner. And there's so many nuances, and you have to sometimes in life, this is the thing that kind of gets me. If I don't know much about it, then I am not going to know the smart question to ask to get the answer that I need. And finding the right person that knows the smart question that you need to be asking, but may not be able to, and providing that information for you so that then you're educated enough to start getting more smart questions on board. Because I will say, artificial intelligence is a fabulous thing for rewriting things, but it does nothing in helping really that individualistic need of where we are in our financial journeys and what we need to do to shift or pivot one part of our lives. And it really is based upon each individual. We're not a mass we are a mass that can invest, but we all have our individual needs and what our goals are.
yeah. And That's the one thing I've pretty much almost anybody I talk to now, I talk to about the financial education and things like that. Just because that I believe it's woefully inadequate in the U.S. right now, and a lot of people believe the wrong things. They don't, and trying to um, educate them on what they should be looking at is in fact, when Mita and I started looking at insurance policies, it took us almost 2 years before we could get our heads around, oh, this might actually work,
Mm,
because we had been so programmed the other way that it's like, wait, this can't work. There's a catch or something, right?
yeah.
And it took us a long time to actually get around that and get our first policy.
Yeah. When I was told, I listened to I loved podcasts. It was a way that I was able to draw from different places and basically find a common theme that maybe, to research a little bit more. And when I learned that through these policies, you can actually have your dollar, you can have $1 in two places, was,
Yeah.
I didn't believe that. I was like, this is a scam. What is this next thing? And I'll say, I also got for myself, having a business, being a sole proprietor, it's really, really difficult to get a line of credit for your business. It is unbelievably difficult to do it. And it doesn't really matter how much you're proving that you've got this income. It's just brutal. And they can call those lines of credit any time. And I was listening to one podcast where it was talking about this gentleman who relied upon his line of credit for his business, and it was the bank took it away from him, and that's what he used to buy his product for his business. And he ended up using a whole life policy to be his line of credit. And when I learned that, that's when I first started my own policy to have my own line of credit for my business as well.
And there are ways that if you have your own business, that your business can take out key man insurance on you,
Hmm.
and you end up, and the business is paying for that policy, but that can then also end up being the line of credit for the business as well. And you don't have to worry about going to an outside bank.
Yeah. And because we all know the banks are, they want your firstborn child in order to give you anything. So it's definitely to be able, you're basically being your own bank
Yeah.
through this industry. And it is complex in the beginning to understand. But when you're working with the right representative that can provide that policy for you, it's really simple and easy, and you become your own banker. It's just, if you can balance a checkbook, you can do it. It's that simple. Once you understand the key components of what you want.
And in fact, we've actually started what we call our family bank. And so the boys are actually in on it now, and they take loans from the family bank, and they're learning how to operate it, because that's the one thing we've told them is after Mita and I are gone, they're the ones that are going to have to keep it going. But the good part about that is we can get it going, and they'll have such a better legacy left to them, because we're leaving them essentially their own bank.
Yeah. And that, and for those that are listening, the family bank means basically you have a banking system with your own checking account and your own rules for your own family. So instead of paying, say, you can finance something as simple as buying a new cell phone, which are not cheap anymore, for the most part. So if you're buying a cell phone and you're going to pay for it anyway, you're going to be paying, if you do the monthly installments, you're paying interest to whatever company you're buying that from. You can actually do small little loans from your family bank and then pay your family bank monthly, the same thing you would be paying. You can make interest, and it compounds. I mean, the concept of understanding how the finance system works and how to create income, it's about compounding and stacking. And
Right.
to have that family bank, it's a wonder. It does take a few generations to get to a larger family bank that really can buy, like, I know people that they buy homes with their own personal family banks. There's I saw a documentary about family banks, and there's a family. They're now a credit union, and they do loans for local businesses for whether it be real estate, startups, lines of credit. They do all sorts of like public, private lending with their family bank. So the possibilities are endless with that.
Yeah.
Just understanding it.
And for a recognizable name, if you there's a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? One of the reasons why they've been able to preserve their wealth is
Mhm.
they've essentially set up their own family bank. That's how they did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. For myself, I will say I read that book. It was a really hard read for me. I tend to listen to books a lot. Love listening to books, but that one was a hard read for sure. I will say that, but I'll put that in the show notes as well because that was just my personal preference. But it's right to the point exactly why the wealth has remained for generations in that family. I think they were also instrumental in creating just the banking system to begin with, weren't they?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think that yeah, I think they helped with that, but
yeah,
and then they preserved their own by having their
right,
own bank.
right. So one last thing I want to talk about before we end. This has been really wonderful. How do you experience fear of missing out when you're choosing you because there's so many things out there now, so much information coming at us all the time. How do you deal with getting started in something and then seeing like, oh, maybe I should pivot over here? Like, how do you manage that, or do you experience that at all?
I do, and that's been one of the hardest things lately because a lot of the deals that are coming up are not penciling out, and I'm the way I used to be is, all right, I can solve this problem. Let me go look at the numbers, and if I play around with them, and I've come to realize that playing around with the numbers is not really the way to do it. It's not going to make a bad deal good. It's going to make it seem good,
Mhm.
right? So it's one of those, you just have to really be disciplined because I've been offered a number of deals over the past few months to help capital raise on, and I just didn't agree with how they were underwriting it. And some of them were, they seemed to have decent answers for what they were talking about, but in the end, it was okay. If when I underwrote it, it was a no for me. So in the end, it was I can't get I can't sell it to my investors. So if I can't honestly sell it to my investors, then I don't need to be another deal.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you just really have to be disciplined about that. And I totally understand what you're talking about with like the shiny object syndrome, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that happens all the time because, being a software engineer, there's a lot of techie stuff that I like to get into and get distracted with. But
Yes, yes. Yeah, it goes from, I went from, well, I'm still in the single family world and into multifamily, but then within any of those, there's many, all of a sudden I thought, well, maybe since the multifamily is not penciling as well right now because of the market conditions, maybe I should do car washes. And then you hear somebody else pivoting over here and doing, ATM machines. And after a while, it was just like zero back in, just narrow focus. I actually, for myself, I had to start slowing down the number of podcasts I were listening to because I found that I was being inundated with information that was confusing me. And it's like, stick with what you know, keep going forward because this is not a race and it's slow and steady that wins the race, not
Mhm.
I get rich quick. That doesn't exist. And luckily I've had my business for 32 years. So I know that it is, the first 2 years is usually how long you get to see, is this business going to make it? What do I need to pivot to make it even more successful? Nothing is overnight. And that's the one disservice I see a lot with social media is that they try to make it seem like if you do this, you can quit your job in 30 days, in 6 months. And that's really not true. It's
No,
not.
it takes some planning. Uh,
Yeah.
Real estate is it is not a get rich quick. Um, I mean, there's an environment a few years ago where a lot of deals were doing really well, and I think I think it got a few people. It misinformed some people because they expected that to be the way it is, and now over the past 2 years with the interest rates and other factors, the way it's been, almost very little deal flow. A lot of those people it, are are figuring out that they had the wrong mentality, but some of them haven't yet, and they're still going into it, hoping to get like the acquisition fees and stuff like that. And it's it's the they'll figure that it's not going to work. But
Yeah. Yeah. I found that being in the couple of deals that I'm in is that the acquisition fees usually aren't distributed at least until the first year. They're kind of held in reserves. You don't get a paycheck once it's closed. And then it just depends on the market because the investors are the ones that are the most important to get paid. And so it's not this instant check that's going to be hitting your account. It's something that depending upon how the deal is operated and the property management taking care of it. And then I'm talking about multifamily right now.
Right.
I will determine whether that acquisition fee actually hits your bank account.
Okay. And for commercial real estate, if you want regular cash flow, then what you do is passively invest. You're going to get cash flow. You're going to get more cash flow sooner. If you with general partner, if you're active on the deal, usually you're not going to make any money until the end of the life cycle of the deal, and
Which is 5 to 7 years,
yeah,
depending
it's
upon,
a
you know.
long term. And if you can set it up so that you have a deal every so often, 5 years in, then you can sort of start having a cycle that you keep doing. But so you sort of have to go into it thinking, all right, if I want for my regular cash flow, I do this. For for the bigger wins, I do this, and obviously it's a little more work, but in the end, you get a little more out of it. But
Yeah, yeah. And it's not to say that you can't make money in the multifamily real estate or in real estate in general. The quicker the cash flow and it's a bigger job if you are joint venturing or own the property outright yourself, where you don't have investors involved. Obviously, if the property is cash flowing, you'll get some cash flow from that. But those are the things you have to have the money in order to get to that place.
yeah,
And in these larger syndications, you can actually bring the money in and not necessarily have any of your own to put into it. But again, it's that, like you said, the end of the life cycle of that particular property. And that's not something that's really honestly said. And I feel for I know some people that quit their jobs and burnt their bridges because they thought that they got that first deal that they were going to be able to get a paycheck that was going to replace their income, and it didn't happen, and they had to go back to work.
yeah, and that's one reason why we did the passive income first, is we wanted to start building that before we started going on the active side. So
Right. Well, Sanjay, thank you so much for being vulnerable, coming here, and I'm still in awe that you started the 10 mutter. Is that what you said it was called?
Tough Mudder.
A tough mutter. Yeah, it would be a tough mutter. That's a good name for it. And then now it's just become a part of your life. What an amazing, amazing accomplishment. And that just goes to show like how your life can change by doing these small things that creates and builds confidence, builds your health. There's so many little facets just from that one change in your life that has a ripple effect in every other aspect. And I think in this podcast, we've touched on a lot of that, and I'm hoping it's inspired people to maybe do one of the tough mutters. I don't know. I might have to just look at it to see what it looks like. It sounds kind of
I can
fun.
send you the link.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe next year I could say I'm done. How fast is it? Let me just ask this and then we'll close.
Okay.
Just thank you everyone for listening for this. But how long does it take you to do one of these?
I am not very fleet of foot, so we were actually out there on the course for 5 hours.
5 hours, 5 hours. Well, that's a long time, but that's actually, when I think about it, it seems very short to me. So, it might be doable. We'll see. I'll check out the link. No promises,
Uh,
people. No promises.
that's my speed. Most people will do it in about 3.5, 4.
Yeah, yeah. That, yeah, I'm probably on your speed. Sanjay, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. And I'll have your information in the show notes. Anybody wants to reach out to you, and we'll definitely connect again at some point and see what your next goal will be in a short period of time. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Candice.
Thank you.
The info in this podcast is straight from our personal experiences. You alone possess the power to manifest your desires. You are the genie in the bottle, awaiting your command. So ask smart questions. We're not licensed financial pros, so be sure to consult with a licensed professional, attorney, or tax consultant.